Good morning, 8x2 on this fine Friday morning. We've made it through yet another week. Well done. So, without further ado, let's get straight into today's lesson. In the previous weeks, we've looked at Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 of a sort of shortened version of Oliver Twist. And today we're going to carry on forward into Chapter 3. In the previous chapters, we met Oliver Twist when he was first born. We saw him in the workhouse. We saw what he did to offend the arrogant and nasty people who ran the place so that he had to run away. He had an unpleasant encounter with an undertaker. And finally, he's fled to try and find the next stage of his life, which is what we're going to look at today. So let's turn to today's learning. Please turn to the PowerPoint you can find on Teams. There's a link there as well to a video recording of the reading we're going to do today. Let's go there now. Okay, so today's lesson on Oliver Twist and the Artful Dodger, a character we're going to meet today, we're actually going to begin with a little bit of vocabulary work. These 8 words are going to show up in today's work, so why don't we begin by doing some dictionary definitions. When I say to, please pause this video, grab your dictionary, whether it's online or an analog physical version of a dictionary. Look up these 8 words and write down their definitions. I've already done one of them for you. So let's pause and do that now. Pause. We're going to begin by looking at this new character, the Artful Dodger. And we start by reading from the actual text from Chapter 8 of Oliver Twist. And I want to focus on this long paragraph here. The boy who addressed this inquiry to the young wayfarer was about his own age, but one of the queerest looking boys that Oliver had ever seen. He was a snub-nosed, flat-browed, common-faced boy enough, and as dirty a juvenile as one would wish to see. But he had about him all the airs and manners of a man. He was short of his age, with rather bow legs and little, sharp, ugly eyes. His hat was stuck on the top of his head so lightly that it threatened to fall off every moment. It would have done so, very often, if the wearer had not had a knack of every now and then giving his head a sudden twitch, which brought it back to its old place again. He wore a man's coat, which reached nearly to his heels. He had turned the cuffs back halfway up his arm to get his hands out of the sleeves, apparently with the ultimate view of thrusting them into the pockets of his corduroy trousers, for there he kept them. He was, altogether, as roistering and swaggering a young gentleman as ever stood 4'6", or something less, in the bleachers. Now hopefully some of the dictionary work you did helped with understanding this description of the character. This is Oliver's first encounter with Mr. Jack Dawkins, who is the Artful Dodger, probably one of Dickens' most famous characters. Now, what you're going to do next is, based on this description that you have in front of you here, you are going to create your own drawing or sketch of this character. And you're going to annotate that drawing or sketch. So you're going to label it with quotes directly from the text. So you're going to draw, you're going to sketch the Artful Dodger, and around it you're going to have a cluster of quotations. Snub-nosed, flat-browed, common-faced, dirty, and of course, beyond that, more quotes than just that. Okay, what is your Artful Dodger going to look like? Now, if you are not a natural artist, like I'm not, definitely, then I appreciate that you may just rely on something that looks a bit more like a stick man, and that's absolutely fine. Don't spend hours on this unless you really want to. Okay, by doing this, you are taking part in something that many people have done before. Oliver Twist has been done as a film many times, and presumably often the character design started with someone doing a sketch of this character. The Artful Dodger has also been done in art quite a bit because it is a very famous character. So when I say, please pause this video and take the time to draw your version of the Artful Dodger annotated with quotes from the text. Don't move forward in the PowerPoint until you've done this. Let's begin. Pause. Wonderful. I'm hoping you've got a fantastic sketch or drawing The Artful Dodger finished now. Please make sure you upload that to Teams as part of today's work. But what we're going to turn to now is the actual reading of the text. Now you've got this in your Teams assignment, so you can open it and read chapter 3 independently. You can also read and follow along with me reading the text on YouTube or stream. You can follow one of these two links from the PowerPoint, or you can follow directly from your Teams assignment. So let's turn to that now. Pause. Wonderful. I hope you enjoyed that, and I apologize for my attempt at doing an accent. I cannot do a Cockney accent, an East London accent, which the Artful Dodger most likely would have had. Sadly, I always seem to go a little bit leprechaun when I try and do an accent. I have no idea what's happening there. Anyway, what you're going to do for your final activity today is you're going to write for me a paragraph, what you would call a PEE or a PEAL or PCQD, or there's so many acronyms and it doesn't really matter. You're writing one short paragraph answering the question, how is the Artful Dodger presented to the reader? Okay? And by doing that, you're really answering, what impression do you as a reader get of the Artful Dodger? Right? What's our first instinct when we meet this character for the first time? Because it's probably going to match up to what Oliver feels as well. And to do that, you can follow the guide that's here, 1, 2, 3, 4, which kind of tells you what to do sentence by sentence. To make it more explicit, you can find in the next slide a sort of loose plan you can follow. Right? The opening sentence, the Artful Dodger is presented as something. Then you use quotes and evidence to support what you've said in that first sentence. When Dawkins is presented as having, quote, this suggests, and then you might want to bring in, well, you should bring in some more evidence. Furthermore, Dickens writes that the Artful Dodger is, and you drop in another quote. This presents him as, so this other quote presents him as, and what else do we learn about the character from that? And then you can summarize everything in a single sentence. Overall, Jack Dawkins seems to the reader to be what kind of a person, right? And you wrap that up. And you put that all together into one paragraph, and you upload that paragraph to Teams. And that's your work for today. Before we wrap up the lesson, I want to focus on one small thing that comes up at the end of the chapter. After Dawkins, the Artful Dodger, brings Oliver to London, he brings him to meet his, I don't want to call him master, but the man he works for, Fagin. And this is a very interesting character, and next lesson we're going to be focusing on him. I just want to return to that description of the character when we first meet him. In the kitchen they found a very old, shriveled Jew, whose villainous looking and repulsive face was obscured by a quantity of matted red hair. He was dressed in a greasy flannel gown, with his throat bare, and seemed to be dividing his attention between the frying pan and a clothes horse, over which a great number of silk handkerchiefs were hanging. Several rough beds made of old sacks were huddled side by side on the floor. Seated round the table were 4 or 5 boys, none older than the Dodger, smoking long clay pipes, and drinking spirits with the air of middle-aged men. These all crowded about their associate as he whispered a few words to the Jew, and then turned round and grinned at Oliver. So did the Jew himself, toasting fork in hand. This description of the character, the shriveled old Jew with the red hair, the fire behind him, he's got a sausage fork in his hand, it's not exactly very complimentary. This is what you would describe as an anti-Semitic, that's anti-Jew, very hostile towards Jews. And there's a lot of context around this that we're going to be looking at a little bit next lesson. What Dickens is doing here is a bit more complex than that. He seems to be setting up this portrayal of this character as being evil. And there are many things about the character that are wrong or questionable. But at the same time, as you read on in the story, you'll see that maybe Fagin's not that bad of a character. And so it could be that Dickens is trying to subvert, to undermine, to challenge or question this all too common portrayal of Jewish characters in English and British literature as these devils. And that's quite a complicated thing. So we're going to come back to that next lesson. We're going to focus on this character of Fagin. But for today, you're focusing on the Artful Dodger. So please complete the work with that and upload what you've done to Teams at the end of the lesson. That's it for today. And thank you very much. Keep healthy, keep safe, and goodbye.